Alright, hey everybody, how's it going? It's Dom here. And no, this is not an RSD Black Friday recap, although I will touch on it in a very interesting way. Start, we're listening to a new release, new 10-inch on the Carbon label. Liam Grant and Mike Gangloff. Liam Grant played here in my barn. And Sam Shalabi. I actually purchased this without the sleeve from Liam when he was here. So he hand drew on the inner sleeve, this is how I got it, because the regular sleeve wasn't ready yet. And this is a reference to the discussion we had. And then when I got something from Joe at Carbon Records, he was able to send me the sleeve to fill in, to add to the 10-inch. So this is a really cool silkscreen sleeve. Recording in Montreal. Really nice textured sleeve. You can get this via Carbon Records, I'm pretty sure, right now. Really wonderful layout and artwork here. 2 side-long face melters from 3 masters of contemporary acoustic sprawl. I didn't mention Sam Shalabi. Sam Shalabi with Mike Gangloff and Liam Grant. We're going to listen to that. So I will mention Black Friday RSD, kind of, and I've been meaning to recap sort of what I've been doing, what happened here since the WFMU Record Fair. I had my final vinyl swap of the year. I had the Ithaca Record Fair, which I put some footage in the vinyl absorption from the other day. And 2 separate, good digs through Angry Mom. One was on the Record Fair day, and one was on Black Friday. So we're going to touch on all that, as well as, a couple of things that came about as a result of Black Friday. So on Wednesday the 19th, I had the final record swap and sale. It's the 3rd one I've done at the downstairs. The downstairs bar here is closing, so I do need a new location for that. But if you don't know, this is what I've been doing. I have various collectors and dealers come and we try to trade records. We play records. I bring my turntable. We have some drinks. And if you're not trading, you're selling or buying. So it was another good one. I put some pictures in here and some good trades were made. A guy came in that we didn't know with 8 to 9 boxes of records that were just completely unsorted, and he just wanted us to look through them. Didn't turn out to be much, but that created a bit of a stir amongst us meatheads going through and be like, ooh, what's this stuff? But I did make a few trades, and this is the 3rd time I think I've made a trade with Cedric, my friend here, who's a French expat and a good friend of a Big Star 1000 Fred, and he lives here in Ithaca. And I traded a couple of new wave, synth wave, post-punk comps. One for this Dollar brand, which I may not keep. It's a trio record, but some of it's solo piano, so I'm not totally sure if I'll keep it. It's on the Freedom imprint via Polydor. This is a UK pressing. Dollar brand, Abdul Ibrahim. Nice one though. Good to get this in a trade. Thank you, Cedric. And this one, a repressing of what came out originally with a different cover, and I think on a budget label. I'll put the original cover in here. Angry Mom had this, but this is the reissue on Chiaroscuro. Walt Dickerson's Unity with Andrew Cyril, Walter Davis Jr., Edgar Bateman, George Tucker. This is a 1978 reissue of a 1964 recorded album. What a cool cover, actually. On this Chiaroscuro label. I haven't listened to that yet. And those are the 2 from Cedric at the vinyl swap, and the one I traded with George from Angry Mom, who always brings stuff that's seemingly new, he hasn't even put out in the store yet. This is one I was sort of looking for, but not really, not on the top of my want list. But I was able to trade him some reggae reissues, a couple of reggae reissues, and some cash to get a first pressing of Woody Shaw's Love Dance on the Muse label, becoming more and more collectible. Woody Shaw, Steve Toure, bass trombone and trombone, Renee McLean, soprano alto, Billy Harper, tenor, Joe Bonner, piano, Cecil McBee, bass, Victor Lewis, drums, Guilherme Franco, percussion, and Tony Waters on the congas. Doesn't look like much, but this is really excellent. I listened to this. This is very much in that sort of light avant, soul jazz, modal. Everybody loves the modal, including me. There's a white label promo. Nice shape on Muse. Definitely getting harder to find this one. So those are the 3 records I got at the vinyl swap. That following Saturday, which would have been the weekend previous to this one, went to the Ithaca Record Fair. 2 times a year that happens. It's mainly a lot of the same sellers, but always worth looking through. Some of them were at WFMU, actually. Jack, who runs the show. And Ross, who's found my channel and has reviewed material objects in a local paper near Woodstock, and that's where he's from. He came up to do the record fair. He told me he was coming, and he was mainly the one I did my business with. So Ross, it was good to meet you. Thanks for hooking up these records. Really like what I got. Now, I have not yet broken the seal on any Fela originals, whether they're African or French. I've been waiting for the time to be right, and lo and behold, Ross had one I wanted. Yellow Fever, nice African pressing of this. I've had a box set that I sold, the Eno curated box set. I sold it, and I've just been waiting for the times right to see these. And here we have Fela's Yellow Fever from I don't have the year in front of me, so I won't really bother too much. Probably the mid-70s on the beautiful Aphrodisia label. Pretty nice shape for an African pressing. By no means perfect, but absolutely on the acceptable level. And then some. I played this and it sounds good. So we'll see now. I hope to find more. These are the kind of things I like to see in person just because of condition issues, usually a thing. So thank you for that one, Ross. This was also one I had in my Discogs cart. I was going to get it. Solomon Iroji, or S.E. Roji, from Sierra Leone, palm wine guitarist. I don't know if I've ever talked about him, but just a beautiful guitar style. If you like Ali Farka, it's not the same, but it's going to bring that kind of feeling to you. African Lady, one of his first LPs following a bunch of singles that he did, pressed in Africa. And just beautiful melodies, really deep, but sort of like warm voice. Absolutely love him. Those early singles I have compiled on 2 different Mississippi comps. I'd like to find some of those original singles, but to get this LP for a really nice price, was already looking for it. There's only 1 pressing of this. Actually, there's 2 pressings, but no recent reissues. African Lady, Solomon Roji. Another Dollar Brand record, Children of Africa, one I was sort of looking for on the IC Inner City label. Also, I think was released on Enja. This is definitely going to get into some free territories. Roy Brooks on drums and Cecil McBee on bass. Really great one. This was marked $15, so he even gave me a discount, of course, after that. So thank you for that, Ross. And yeah, The African Lady by Solomon Roji was a great price on all these. So great to get that. Haven't checked this out yet, but it's on these IC labels. And the last one I got from Ross was this Steve Lacy Quintet with Steve Potts and Kent Carter, Oliver Johnson, and Irene Ivey on the violin and cello. So that's should be out there. Black Jazz. I'm sorry, Black Saint. What am I saying? So that was what I got there. And I looked around a little bit more. There was a couple of young kids selling like just Salvation Army find or thrift store finds, and then a bunch of indie records that must have been from their collection. I picked up a copy, a more recent reissue of AM for $10. I figured if anyone needs this, let me know. I'd probably use this for trade, but couldn't leave it there for $10. In totally fine shape. The first album by Wilco. I really like this. And then something else from another guy who had all sorts of interesting stuff. Last time I was, or one of the previous record fairs, I think it was a Ken McIntyre record on New Jazz, first pressing, which he interestingly had a reissue of the same record this time. But this was one of the earliest supposed, maybe earliest Mexican free jazz records. Atras del Cosmos, Cold Drinks Hot Dreams on the Blank Forms label from last year. Recorded in 1980, remastered by Paul Gold, my guy. A few different tracks. It looks like Herbie Mann, Dave Liebman, a few originals, an Ornette Coleman track, and Kenny Wheeler track, and definitely free. This is free. Don't know if there's any electronics on this, but there's a hype sticker. I checked in with Jose because I remember him talking about something, and this is surely what he was mentioning a year or two ago for me to check out. Cool cover. Atras del Cosmos were a Central force in the Mexican avant-garde arts community and often considered the country's first free jazz group, but are rarely heard outside of their native land. Now, for the first time, Blank Forms issues a red-hot 1980 recording capturing the core trio, joined by double bassist Claudio Enrique, piano, saxophone, percussion. So yeah, no electronics, but in a delirious improvisation that sucks in traces of New York lo-fi style jazz, Mexican folk music, and the influence of Don Cherry's organic music into its heady gravitational pull. So that's what we have here on this. I did check this out. This is out there, but I enjoyed it. This was an archival release, not a reissue. Never been released before this, so you can probably find this for $25, and that's about what I paid for it. So check that out. That came out last year. And yeah, that's what I got at the record fair. After being there for a few hours, I walked next door to Angry Mom Records and went through the new arrivals and a bunch of other things. There's a ton of Steeplejays, Black Saint, and Soul Note. A lot of the stuff isn't quite appealing to me based on the production. That 80s production sometimes gets in the way for me. But for many of you, if you're nearby, you should come check the jazz section, new arrivals. There's a ton of this stuff, original pressings, the whole thing. But there was also a bunch of Egberto Gismonti, and I pulled out one of those. This is from 1984 on the EMI label. This one I listened to in the store and I really enjoyed it. Gismonti, interesting player. Don't have any Gismonti, so this was cool to get for pretty cheap. About $12 for that. And the other one, not a cheap record. You all know this one. At the Vinyl Swap, Cedric was playing a record on Strata East that he was looking to trade with George on. Angry Mom. And it's one I knew, and I was like, I don't know if I'm totally need that. I like a lot of Strata East, a bunch I don't. But we played it at the record swap in the bar. And we were playing mainly because the condition was looking a little rough. So we're playing it, and I was listening to it, and it was pretty good. And Cedric ended up trading for it, and I was like, this is way better than I remember. And I was like, all right, well, you trade for it, no worries. So that day after the record fair at Angry Mom, I walk in, and I'm talking to George, and I'm like, hey, you have another copy of this? And he's like, yeah, I do. This is the nicer copy. And I'm talking about Mutima. Of course, Cecil McBee, one I've checked out before, one you all know. This really was much better than I remember, and I really enjoyed the heck out of it. So I decided to get this. George gave me a really fair price, and this is in nicer shape. Not perfect. The spine's got some wear, but the record lean, so. Nice stuff. And yeah, that's what I picked up at Angry Mom after the record fair last weekend. So this week, Friday was Black Friday. I had no intention of going to wait in line or anything. I usually work those days, but was obviously not working this day. So I had a pretty relaxed morning here after Thanksgiving, and I said, oh, well, I'll definitely go into Angry Mom in the afternoon. So I did, and none of the releases that were left. I was maybe interested in the Dylan. The one I decided I did want was the Ween Shinola. I'm not going to try to search for an original pressing of that, and there's many reissues of it, and they're all expensive. So I'm like, I'll just get that, because it's of the earlier Ween stuff, which is what I like, and I got into them only 5-6 years ago, actually. I totally ignored them in my younger years. But I'm like, I'll get the reissue, but he had sold out of those, and I didn't, get to him quite soon enough. So I ended up, by the way, that's the only record store day release I ended up buying, the Ween. I ended up getting that 8 a.m. Sunday, or 8 a.m. Saturday from Neon Groove, so I did get that. So that's officially the only one I got. I was looking at the Don Cherry Ayler box, but I was like, I don't think I'd truly play it. But yeah, I decided the Ween, that's the one I will probably be the most interested in. I do have 3 original Ween pressings. Maybe I'll show those, actually. I don't think I've ever showed them. I think I showed them on a stream. But these Ween records, originals, reissues, they're all getting so expensive. Let's see. Yeah, I have them right here. So I'll show these real quick. The Pod is the one I got into from the inception because of the song Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese. I love it. So I went down a Ween hole and got a few records. This is the original shimmy disc pressing. I got this for a super cheap price in like 2018, 2019. on shimmy disc. You know, obviously emulating the Leonard Cohen greatest hits. And all around the same time, I got these 3 records. Chocolate and Cheese on the Grand Royal label, of course. This is obviously a pretty notorious cover. Double LP with the insert. Gene and Dean, Diener and Jeaner on these Grand Royal labels. Really super reasonable comparatively. And then the one that's the biggest, I almost bought the Mollusk, and it was like the same price as this, but I didn't. From a different seller, but I had to go to the UK to get this, but I love this one. And I know Jonas just got this too, but this is the original first pressing of Ween's Pure Guava, UK press. It was pretty expensive then, and now it's gotten insane. I don't want to sell this. I really do enjoy it. It's on the Creation subsidiary August Records, which I don't know what else is on that, but that's what the labels look like. It's a double LP. So yeah, figured a little bonus there. I'll show you those Weens, but I did get Shinola at Angry Mom. I did look completely through the entire jazz section and the new arrivals again. I hadn't looked through the jazz section in a while, and I pulled out 3 records, and that's what I bought. I've been looking for this Frank Lowe. This was $10. First release on the Arista Freedom, or the Arista label. This is great. It's got Steve Reed on drums, and only 1 track, but anything with Steve Reed I'm in. And then it's got a bunch of this sort of, bag artists: Lester Bowie, Joseph Bowie, Abdul Wadud, Charles Bobo Shaw, and Frank Lowe, who's obviously gonna knock the crap out of everyone on this record. So this is fresh. I think it's from 1975. Yeah. I found this, already had this, but nice to get this for like $12. George Lewis tribute or homage to Charlie Parker is awesome. If anyone needs a copy. Douglas Ewart, Anthony Davis, George Lewis playing tenor trombone, and Richard Teitelbaum bringing the interesting Polymoog, Multimoog, and Micromoog synths. This is from 1979 on Black Saint. Got that. And then I've been grabbing these Penguin Cafe Orchestra records as I see them. It's kind of been a recent thing for me within the last couple of years. These have all of a sudden really started to appeal to me, and they never had in the past. I really love these sort of small chamber groups. Very enigmatic, very just nice, interesting compositions. They're just really playful, but not boring at all. It's led by Simon Jeffes, and this is the U.S. pressing of the Eno Obscure edition, the UK edition in the Obscure series, which I'd like to get and upgrade from this. But this is Obscure number 7. This is, like I said, the EG US reissue. So Jeffes playing guitar, bass, ukulele, spinet, upright piano, electric piano, quattro, mouth percussion, vocals, cello, and ring modulator. Along with another group. That's the Penguin Cafe Orchestra, but he's sort of the guy. Performed by members of Music From. This is the first one. I think it's the 3rd Penguin Cafe I have now. So yeah, that is what I got there. But I wanted to talk about another Record Store Day release that came out that I didn't get because I was like, I already have this. It got reissued in 2019 for the first time. And it's really kind of every video I've watched, whether it's from Norman Maslov or The Waxed or Vinyl Piper, everyone's been talking about this record and this artist. And I figured it'd be a perfect time to do a impromptu Acid Archives Diaries. So the artist I'm talking about is Craig Smith, aka Maitreya Kali, or Satyasai Maitreya Kali, an artist persona he took on in the throes of sort of an acid breakdown following a bunch of failures, stressful times, drugs, and it's by this guy named Craig Smith. There's a biography called Swim Through the Darkness. I'll put a picture here, which I own but is on loan. So my friend's reading it right now. He's had it for a long time because I've had the book for a long time. I've already read it. This Craig Smith, an interesting story. This is the 2019 reissue of 2 rare records called Apache and Inca. He issued them as a double LP first, and maybe only made 100 to 200 copies, and it'll fetch 5 figures if it comes up for sale, if it ever comes up for sale. I think it has. I haven't checked recently. But they were issued in 1972. It's a little confusing because the double record failed, this is a reproduction of, and then he issued them as separate individual LPs as Apache and Inca. And those both were small runs. He was just handing them out to people. No one caught any interest. But that's not the full story. The full story of this Craig Smith, he was a songwriter on the rise. And he came out of like really good background, California. I read the whole book, so I remember a lot of it still. He ended up being on the Andy Williams show and like this folk singing group that was featured on there. And he's like this really epitome of a California sort of like young kid, big, handsome, big smile, very, charming, personable. And he ended up, to cut to the chase here, getting songwriting deals and wrote a song for the Monkees. Was it multiple songs or at least one? Wrote songs for Glenn Campbell, Andy Williams, of course. So he was a songwriter who was making some money, and he was starting to become a name. But he wanted to do more, and with his association with the Monkees, he was able to get a contract he got a production contract with Michael Nesmith, and he had a band called the Penny Arcade. And this is the unreleased Penny Arcade record that Sundays put out, which I think has been reissued and it's available. This is Craig Smith here, and this is his band. And Michael Nesmith plays on this. There's Michael Nesmith, and he was producing. They were producing and practicing at his house. This is called Not the Freeze. Some of this music would appear on the Maitreya Kali record, but he also had another group at the time. They only put out one single, which I also own. I'll have to show it another time, and it's by Craig Smith and Chris Ducey, who would end up being in the band The Penny Arcade. Just before this, they released one single on Capitol, Isha, which is awesome. Chris and Craig had that songwriting duo, which evolved into this, The Penny Arcade, which all came on the backs of Craig Smith's sort of accomplishments in songwriting. A sub-story on this guy, Chris Ducey, is that he recorded a record under his name called, see if you guys can follow along, I've talked about this before. Chris Ducey recorded a record for the Surrey label called Songs of Protest and Anti-Protest. You'll notice here the name is Chris Lucy, and this guy's name was Chris Ducey. Well, Chris Ducey recorded all of this music for this record and realized he was still under contract with Capitol Records for the Chris and Craig single, and they had to shelve this record. Well, the Surrey label, being surly or being shady, they're like, well, we have all these song titles and we have this artist, let's just bring in another artist to say that they're Chris Ducey, except we'll call it Chris Lucy. So this other artist came in to record this album, all new music, maybe same lyrics or something, all new music, and it wasn't a guy named Chris Lucy. It was actually Jameson, or Bobby Jameson, who recorded a record for MGM, which is actually a pretty cool record. He's the one who recorded this album. So this all stems from the Craig Ducey with Craig Smith. And this is a really cool folk rock with some really haunting, ghostly melodies, and this is a beautiful album, actually. It's actually really good. And the final weird thing is that this picture is actually Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. So there's that sub note. But back to Craig Smith. The Penny Arcade gets shelved, doesn't happen, and he ends up getting turned on to psychedelics and drugs and is already having maybe mental issues at the time. And this music doesn't come out until Sundays. He ends up going on a world tour, or just to go on a seeking tour. He just starts traveling, and there's some pictures of it in here. He goes to Afghanistan, Peru. He goes to, here he is. This is the original booklet that comes with this 2019 reissue. And he ends up getting like beaten up. There's some really great pictures in here. He ends up getting beaten up and like beaten with his life. I think in Afghanistan he was really barking up the wrong tree at a market or something, and he gets totally assaulted And the whole story in the book is all there, but is in the book, but there's a bunch of the story in these liner notes, which I'm assuming are in the new Record Store Day version too. So he comes back, and all the people that said this guy was like this guy was going to be huge, he was a songwriting genius, he was like set to become like a premier name, all of a sudden they don't recognize him. He's starting to look different. He's starting to look more like this, and people are like starting to try to get away from him. But the music that he records, he had already made all that music, and then he started having this mental breakdown. And it was as he was pressing these records and trying to give them away, that's when he started getting really scary, and people wanted to avoid him. And he was like following people and like just turning up on people's houses. And this guy who was like just supposed to be like A-list sort of songwriter turned into a drug casualty. He ended up dying on the streets in LA and being unrecognizable. Let me look at some of this imagery. So he made these 2 records, Apache and Inca, and yeah, there was no interest. Custom pressed, 2 different labels. There's in this reissue, and I'm assuming they're all in the reissue, there's all this reproduction of all these pamphlets that he made. This is him like on his world tour, where he went by himself trying to find answers. Black and White is Tan Trick, Man, Andy Williams, Glenn Campbell, Cheryl, Thank You. Gabber Zabo, Jesus, I Am, Krishna is Cheryl, Letterman, Monkeys. Like, it's all this sort of non sequiturs. In this package is a reproduction of the inner sleeve on one of them, and there's all sorts of weird messages on the labels that are reproductions of the original record. And what does it sound like? Well, it's basically psych folk. Sometimes it's a little clean, sometimes it's a little too pretty, which you wouldn't think, because this guy was clearly going nuts. There's this long letter that was a reproduction, which I forget this even is. This is like a letter from, it's like a reproduction of a letter he wrote. Snippets of sort of field recordings and snippets of him like in other countries when he was on this little Seeking tour. And then there's some of the psychedelic rock with the Penny Arcade, which I highly recommend, by the way. And it just gets to like a far out place, really out there psychedelic folk, I guess. The story about him is actually even better than the music, and I really do enjoy the music. I really like it. It's not like my favorite psych folk record that there is, but it's definitely on the interesting side of stuff. So a tragic story of someone who was supposed to be huge and then ended up really freaking people out and wanting to be someone you'd avoid. Obviously highly rare. There were bootleg issues of this. I was looking for this like 15 years ago, almost buying the bootlegs. The CDs I think are bootlegs too, done by Shaddix, but the one Indian reissues of the double and the singles were going for $300 or $400 and were unofficial. So when this came out in 2019, this was a big release for me and a lot of people. I know Shawn The Vinyl Dreamscape has talked about this pressing. I still thought maybe this was sort of not something that people would care that much about. But the story is interesting. I highly encourage you to read the book. And I guess this new pressing, which is going for now upwards of what was paid for on Record Store Day, Black Friday, that had a bonus 7-inch, which it's okay. I don't have that. No big deal. But wondering how that sounds. If anyone who has it, what does the bonus 7-inch sound like? There is another record which you can buy for like $20 to $25 of the Craig Smith demos. It's like demo versions of some of these songs before he loses his mind. So it's all sort of like straight solo acoustic versions, and they're very pretty and pretty raw. I ended up selling that. I had that. It's called Love Is Our Existence, I think. Apache and Inca, I mean, that's just some... Look at this guy. He was definitely not well. These are definitely two sort of singular, trippy records from the mind of someone losing their mind. And I'm assuming they reproduced all of the inserts and all of the ephemera for the new edition. There's really a bunch of cool stuff. Maitreya Kali, Craig Smith. After suffering an LSD-induced mental breakdown, Los Angeles-based songwriter Craig Smith renamed himself Maitreya Kali and custom pressed Apache and Inca, a double LP documenting his musical, personal, and spiritual journey. His message to the world, encoded on the album jackets, is rambling, quasi-mystical, messianic verse. It was urgent, desperate, delusional, and disturbing. Recorded between 1967 and 1971, the music tells a different story. Achingly beautiful, haunting acoustic folk songs, luminescent psychedelic folk rock, eerie off-kilter acid rock fragments, Field recordings, all meticulously woven into a magical, mesmerizing whole. Yep. Apache Inca is an extraordinary work, not the dark, self-indulgent ramblings of a crack messiah, but a thoughtfully crafted collection of work by a singer and songwriter of remarkable depth and talent whose world was falling apart. Soon afterwards, Maitreya and Craig disappeared into the shadows. He died homeless on the streets in 2012. And that's the thing, when you hear these records, like, man, it's too bad people don't hear this, because this was like really well-conceived songs. He was a good songwriter. So this was the first ever official reissue, this double LP that I have. 7 of the tracks are from the Penny Arcade record. So if you get the Penny Arcade, some of that's some repeat, but not all of it. So I do recommend getting that Penny Arcade. This was only 500 pressed of this pressing, so I think there's 400 of the new one. But being that this is a rare Acid Archives record, let's do the Acid Archives Diaries and check out the book here. Okay. Maitreya Kali, Los Angeles, California. Apache Inca, 1972. 2LP gatefold insert paraphernalia, rarity 4. Apache Inca, 1999. Little Indians of Germany. Yeah, it just talks about those. Those are the bootlegs. And then Shaddux did the CDs. So this first entry is for the double LP. There's 3 different entries for the double and each single, all done by Patrick Lundborg. A small number of copies were made as a double LP before the LPs were issued separately. This package also contained a booklet, poster, feather, joss stick, and inserts. The feather wasn't in there in this reissue. The 2LP reissue imitates the release except for the more exotic paraphernalia. Background: in 1966-67, Craig Smith made a bundle of cash writing songs for the Monkees, Andy Williams, and Glen Campbell, which is what financed his vast travels and subsequent transformation into Maitreya Kali, which he thought he was like God, as Maitreya Kali, by the way. The 67-68 recordings he did for the Penny Arcade project include several tracks also found on the Maitreya LPs and were released by Sundays. Check out the entry for Craig's old partner, Chris Ducey, for an unrelated story that is just as strange, which is what I referenced earlier. Okay, so here's the Apache, released on the Akashic label, his label. Also rarity 4, and there's also the 1989 bootleg. This was apparently released before Inca, but the recordings have a later sound. Continuing Maitreya's trek down Latin America, this is a more low-key and introverted, as if the drugs caught up with him. The strange poetry and scribblings on the Jehovah-style sleeve confirms such suspicions. The album has a couple of Marvy, I don't know what Marvy is, folk-psych tracks such as Color Fantasy, but doesn't really live up to the hype I've seen on it. Beach Boy Mike Love unexpectedly pops up singing on a Monkees track. Actually, he's just humming along from the mixing board that Maitreya wrote when he was still Craig Smith. Originals can be identified via printing on the spine and master dub etched in the dead wax. Several other differences exist, but these should suffice. The bootleg pressing is believed to be larger than 300 stated. So that's Apache Inca, released in 72 also, same year, on the United Kingdom of America label, also him. Nominally Maitreya's second album, but the material on it is mainly from an earlier era than Apache. To me, superior to the more well-known Apache, with a fabulously folk-rocky 1966-67 West Coast pop art experimental band sound. For the most part, especially side 1. There's also some pretty enjoyable mellow hippie folk, strange spoken bits, and interviews with Latino chicks making fun of the sensitive seeker-type guy. Worth checking out for both 60s and 70s heads. So that's it, the Acid Archives Diaries on Craig Smith, aka Maitreya Kali. If you got this new reissue, I'm curious what this looks like. This is, again, the 2019 first official reissue. Double LP with letters, pamphlets, the Inca inner sleeve reproduction, and this awesome booklet, which I'm assuming is the same booklet in there now. But that's it. That's my Black Friday entry for you, as well as my record store, or my record fair and vinyl swap find. So that's it.